Alright, welcome back. So, if you don't remember, which is not possible, but if still you don't remember, we were working on a grid system and Flexbox code along, and we were making this, a kind of post page for a company named Penation, which is an imaginary company, which I made up by myself. And this was what we were aiming for. This page is extremely responsive. And what we had covered in the last video was until this. So the portion until the Jumbotron right here has been completely styled and doesn't need any more styling now. But of course, this is just author and content, two words written right here. And we want it to look something like this, right? So now you might be thinking that I put a lot of effort in this one to make this look actually good, but I did not, right? What I did was I went to Bootstrap, I went to the documentation, I searched for card. And this is what a card is. And this is exactly what I have on my page. So I simply copied this, and in place of the author, I pasted this in. You go down to this a little. Alright. So this is what I have, and the first thing that we need to remove is this, because this is something that I do not know why they have added. And so now we need to add the image source. Right, this image is source, and this is again from Unsplash, like always, and this is from nature. I searched nature and I don't remember where it was from. Let's just take this one for now. I'll make this square, I think. So now we have this copy image address, right, and I can paste that here. The alt I want to be author image. The class is by default by Bootstrap. So if I refresh this, I see I get my image, which is what I was aiming for, and I get my card title, which is card title, and a quick description, right? So now I need to change this, and it is clearly evident from here that the card title is John Wick, and the description is really good action writer. You could just do lorem ipsum. I just thought I would put some meaningful text here for I don't know what reason, but here we are. Alright, so now if I refresh my page, I see I have my two things here and I do not need this button. Now you could choose to actually, have this button and make it like an email thing. If I show you, this will be email, and the href could be mail to, let's say, John Wick @johnwick.com. So this would open up an email tab, and this is actually something that makes sense, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to have the author here, and so this is what we get, and this looks nice, right? So now the next thing we can do is we can put the content in here. Alright, so this is where the content goes, and again I have this thing right here, and putting this did not require any of my effort. Why? Because this is simply .card.bg light, and this gives me this. I mean, this is a pretty small line right now because there's no content, but I'll just put lorem 100 for now. And you see, this is exactly what I had. So yeah, so the first thing I have is the H2 saying movie review, and I have the H2 saying movie review. Now let's get the data from here and put it in our website, right? So the first thing, as you can see, I have the small line here. If you remember, that was an HR. Next we have an H4 saying plot. Then we have paragraph in which the font, the text is lorem 100, I remember. Then we have another H4 which says acting. This has a paragraph having lorem 50. We have another H4 saying comparison, and this has 100, I guess. Doesn't matter anyway, so we'll do lorem 100. Then we have another H4 saying conclusion, and we have a paragraph with lorem 150. Alright, so if I refresh, I see my content is on point right now, and this is exactly what I wanted. However, you might be noticing that this looks a little better than this, and the sole reason behind that is that there is no padding in this, and there is a 10 pixel padding in this, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to select the card, right? So this is what you might think of doing at first, but let's see what happens if we give a card of padding 10 pixels. We see this gets a padding 2, and this is definitely not looking better than before when there was no padding. So how do you target this special card and not this one? And of course you could add an ID or do something, but I'm not talking about adding an ID. I'm talking about something that you might use a lot in your development, which is addressing these two classes at the same time. So we could do something like .card .bg light. So now we are limiting our padding to only the card, to only the element which has both these classes, right? So if I refresh, I see this does get a padding, but this is still the same, which is exactly what we wanted. So now if we have a look when the page is actually full, we see everything is the same, except you might have noticed the spacing between them, and I think it looks good like this too. However, just to, alright, I'll let it remain like this. Okay, this looks better now, I think. So what we are going to do now is we have our content in place, and now we're going to actually make this responsive. So we see that this image right here does not exceed a specific value, because you don't want to have a really big author name here too. You could prefer to have that, but it might look good in some images. It is actually looking good in this image, but it might not look good in a lot of images, including this one, and that is why the width has been kind of set to be a maximum value. So what we can do is we can target this image, and to target this image, I'm actually gonna give it a class, an ID, because so the reason I'm giving an ID is that this is a class of card, right? And we want to give a maximum width to this, and not just the image. We don't want the border to be going till here and the image ends here. We want to target this specific card. So, and we have other cards here too, and this has no specific things. So this is a place where we would have to make an ID, and I'll do something like author, right? So now I do hash author, and now you can use the property called max width, and I guess that would be 280 pixels. And if I refresh, this is not the page I should be refreshing. I see now I have my author name, which is of a decent size, and it will look good no matter what happens, no matter how big our screen size is. Now here you see the problem, right? This is getting a little out of hand. This is not something we wanted. So the first solution to that is actually pretty simple. That here it is. So this is column 3, but that is from the large breakpoint, right? Before that we need to have something else, and that something else is basically that we wanted to cover the whole page horizontally. Alright. So if I refresh, this doesn't change on this breakpoint, but here we see that this does change. And now this is a thing that because you have set the max width to be something, this still looks good. And if so, we do have this column 12, so this is taking up the entire space right now, right? And if you wanted to center this, you could using justify content center, but the thing is that you can imagine this would not look good in the center too, right? Having like an author in the center and then below something like this would look really bad. So this is where actually I have spent a lot of time in thinking about how this should look when our screen is below large size, and what I ended up was something like this. So we see that this gets side by side when the screen size becomes small, and I hope you got an intuition about how that should happen, that it is stacked at one screen size and it is side by side and at a other screen size. That always implies a grid, right? So inside the author, like inside the card, I made another grid, and this is the nesting grid thing that I wanted to show you, right? So I made another grid, and this is called column. So the first thing we need is the row, right? And inside the row, now we'll have another column. Now we need to figure out the class here. So now whenever this is above large, both of them take up, full 100% of the space. So here we're making a grid inside this card. So this card would be split into 12 units and not the whole page. That is something you need to understand about a nested grid, right? So now we need to do a column large 12. That is on screen sizes of large or greater, our image needs to take up the full space. So we'll move the image inside this. So now we have this, and we could make a similar thing right now. And we could move this whole card body up into this column. So now this was already happening, so this is not something really big. What we need to do is we need to add a column 6, yeah, to both of these. So now they are 6 by 6, 6 and 6 by default, but 12 and 12 as soon as we get on large. So this is still not working fine, and the reason behind this is that we have given a maximum width of 280 pixels. So it doesn't matter if we've given the whole 12 pixels to this, the 12 units to this, it still takes up only 280 pixels. So here I want to talk about the thing that I've talked about a lot earlier, which is the media query. So this is how a media query works. You would have something like this, and then inside here you would have a parameter that let's say my parameter is max width of, and I want everything to change when it is below large, so I'll do 1024 pixels. Alright, so what is this new syntax that you're seeing? So you can see this @media and max width 1024 pixels. So what this means is that I'll put styles in here now. I will do something like #author max width 100%, right? So what this query will do is that this ID and this style is applied only when the width is less than 1024 pixels, and that is why the range is max width 1024 pixels. So this is the maximum width at which these styles need to work, right? And the reason this is 1024 pixels is that if you go into Bootstrap docs and you find the screen size for large, that is 1024 pixels. So now if I refresh this, I can expect to see something like this, right? And in this image it is looking really good, even like this. But in the image I had here, covering half of this, even in this size, you can imagine this was getting a lot stretched. So what I did was I gave it only 3 units on the medium screen size and 9 more units to this John Wick thing. And as soon as we got to small or extra small, they took up half of each. You can see here, right? Now they take up half. But we don't need to do that here because the image already looks good. So now the next thing that we want to see is that this moves down and this moves up. First of all, let's just add some margin between them. So you can do something like margin bottom 10 pixels. So now they have a nice margin between them and they look a little better, not completely cramped. So now probably the only thing left in the page is that we have to move this below this, and we have to change the order when the screen size is below large. So for that, I know how that's done, but just to show you, that is done through Flex, right? So we'll go to Utilities, we'll go to Flex, and if you scroll down here, where is it? Here it is. So we have this class of order, right? Change the visual order of specific Flex elements. So what this does is, basically this is breakpoint sensitive too. This is all I wanted to show you from the docs. And now I'm going to add some classes here that you'll see, and then it will make a lot of sense. So this div is the enclosing div for the author, and this div is the enclosing div for the content, right? So let's make our classes. So order large. So when the screen size is large or greater, we want this to come first. So we do order LG1, and in this we do order LG2. However, other than large, we want it to come first, and that is why it has order 1, and this has order 2. Now it is quite possible that you got a little confused with what I put there, 1, 2s and 2s and 1s, and that is because you might not have a complete idea of what this is happening because you have not made this yet. So I'd recommend that you pause this video once, take a moment, and think about what the orders need to be at one screen sizes, and I'm sure this will make sense to you. Right. So if I refresh, I do not see any change right now, and that is because the order is this is first and this is second. Yeah, when we are large and above. However, as soon as we get to a screen size which is lesser than large, we see this moves up and this moves down, which is exactly what we wanted, right? So now we have got our thing, and now this page almost looks good. I think we should also add the functionality here because this image is actually too large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this column 6, and I'm going to add a class named column medium 3, and in this too I can do column medium 9. Alright, so if I refresh, I see this looks much better because you do not want the author name to be as big as the article, right? Of course this is smaller than the article, so now this looks much smaller, and as soon as we get to small, they become half and half, and now this looks as it should, perfect, right? And now we have a completely responsive web page, and this is the amount of responsiveness you would want to have in a professional web page too, right? So now there's only one thing that's different between these two. It's the spacing between them. You might choose to keep it like this, but I wanted to show you one thing, and that's why I'll change the spacing here too. That this, inside the row, I'm gonna add justify content around. And this worked. Now, we should be happy this worked, of course, but there's one question that should come to your mind, and that is, we did not do deflex here, and still it is working. And we haven't done deflex above this too. So how is this working? I mean, how? So that is the thing, that the grid in Bootstrap is now fully flex enabled, right? From Bootstrap 4. And so you could have a lot of uses for this. Imagine having three things, right? And both take up, all three take up 3 units. So 3 plus 3 plus 3, we have had 9 units of the page covered up. And now we have 3 units left. And imagine we have to split them into 6 pieces. So we cannot split 3 units into 6 pieces, right? This is getting a little confusing. Imagine having these 3 buttons only on the page, and you want to space them evenly, right? Like, you know, the around thing. So you want to have some space here, some here, some here, and some here. So this is 4 spaces, but you have 3 units left. So ideally you would have to assign 3 by 4 units to each column, which is not possible. However, with Flex you can do this. Don't get confused by this. If we ever need this, I'll show you this with an example, and then this will become clear. The only reason you might be confused right now is because I have told you this verbally, which is never a good idea. But that is not our main focus right now, and that's why we're not going to take a particular example for that. For now, we have completed this really good looking website, and you could actually have this in a lot of scenarios, right? And this is really responsive. You could have different layouts. You could think of a different layout. That's obviously fine. But we have made what I thought of, and that's it. So now we are finished with CSS. We are finished with Bootstrap. And if you have made this, then you are now capable to make any good looking page without any problems, right? Alright. So that is it for this video, and that is it for Bootstrap. I'll see you in the next video.